Welcome to Betrayal Stories. In today's video, we're diving into a story that reminds us how silence can be louder than shouting, and how the quiet moments we ignore often become the ones that change everything. If you're new here, welcome to our channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep sharing stories that deserve to be heard. They say life can change in the blink of an eye, and sometimes it's not a dramatic accident, not a fight, not even a goodbye. Sometimes it's smaller. A pause, a hesitation, a choice you didn't think mattered. Until it does. That's what happened to me. There are moments I still replay in my head like a broken record. What if I had walked away that day? What if I had told myself it was nothing, ignored that sound, and carried on? Maybe things would have stayed the same. Maybe I would have lived inside the illusion a little longer. But I didn't walk away. I stayed. I listened. And that choice, that single decision, split my life into two parts, before and after. And here's the hardest truth of all. I wasn't just an innocent bystander caught in someone else's betrayal. My silence, my hesitation, my refusal to confront what I already knew, that made me part of the destruction. This is my story. A story about silence so heavy it could drown you. A story about love that withered in the quiet. And a story about how betrayal doesn't always begin with lies. Sometimes it begins with the things we choose not to say. Our house looked perfect from the outside. A neat lawn, white shutters, flowers that bloomed in order like soldiers. The kind of home people drive by and say, "They've got it all together." We had been married for 7 years. Respectable jobs, dinner invitations, a social circle that envied how stable we looked. But inside, there was a silence that never left. Not the peaceful kind of silence that comes from understanding or comfort, but the kind that fills a room with the weight of everything. That's missing. It showed up in small ways. Birthdays where we exchanged gifts but not smiles. Conversations replaced by glances at our phones. Nights spent lying side by side, back to back, our bodies inches apart, but our hearts galaxies away. It wasn't one fight or one bad day. It was slow erosion, quiet, invisible, but constant. You don't realize when a relationship begins to fade. It doesn't collapse like a building. It decays like old paint, one flake at a time. And in that fragile quiet, everything began. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I remember sunlight spilling through the curtains, dust dancing in the air, and the faint smell of lemon cleaner. I was dusting the shelves in the living room when I heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound drifting down from upstairs. It wasn't loud, but it made me stop. My hand froze on a photo frame. One of us smiling at the beach, taken years ago when things still felt effortless. At first, I brushed it off. Houses make noises, pipes hum, wood creaks, wind whispers through the vents. But this sound, it wasn't random. It had a pattern, and something about it tugged at me, like a thread daring me to pull and unravel everything holding together the fabric of my world. Don't overthink it, I told myself. Just keep cleaning. But curiosity has a cruel voice. It doesn't shout, it whispers, it tempts. It tells you that you deserve to know, even when knowing might destroy you. So I climbed the stairs. The air upstairs felt different, thicker. Like walking into a room where someone had just confessed something and the air hadn't recovered yet. The sound grew sharper with each step. My pulse echoed in my ears, and then I stopped. In front of the guest room door. We used to call it the extra room. But somewhere along the years, it had quietly become his room, his space, his retreat, his escape. The door was cracked open just enough for a sliver of light to spill into the hallway. My heart pounded so loud it drowned everything else. Part of me wanted to run, to turn around, pretend nothing was wrong, and keep pretending life was fine. But something deeper, the ache that had lived in me for years, told me not to. I pushed the door open, and there it was. At first, just the glow of a screen. Then words, sentences that weren't mine, words written to someone else, intimate, raw. The kind of words that had once been mine, long ago. My breath caught in my throat. He looked up. Our eyes met, For a moment, the world froze. His face went pale, his eyes wide with shock. The silence between us was deafening, heavy enough to crush the air out of the room. He fumbled, trying to close the window to hide the evidence, but it was too late. The truth was already burned into me. We just stared at each other, trapped in the gravity of what couldn't be undone. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask him how long or why, or who, but no words came out. He opened his mouth, stammering, "It's not what it looks like." And I almost laughed, because it was exactly what it looked like. The silence that followed was worse than any argument we'd ever had. It wasn't empty, it was full of guilt, shame, and the quiet acknowledgement that we had finally crossed a line neither of us could return from. I stumbled out of the room, my legs weak, my heart trying to outrun itself. I pressed my back against the wall and slid down until I hit the floor. That day, everything changed, even though we didn't say a single word. That night, dinner was a performance. We sat across from each other like two actors trapped in a scene we couldn't improvise our way out of. The clink of forks, the scrape of plates, the hum of a refrigerator that suddenly felt too loud. He didn't apologize. I didn't accuse. We just ate in silence, a silence that was no longer ordinary. It had a pulse now, a presence, something dark and alive, sitting between us, and it stayed. Days passed, but every moment carried the weight of that discovery. I'd catch him glancing at me, then looking away. He'd start to speak, then stop. We were two people haunted by the ghost of what we used to be. Out in the world, we still played our parts. We smiled for photos. We laughed at dinners. We told people we were fine. But behind closed doors, our home had become a museum of what once was. Every sound, every silence, every look, it all screamed of the thing we wouldn't name. And here's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It's not just about what was done. It's about everything that follows. The paranoia, the self-doubt, the endless questioning. I became someone I didn't recognize, checking his phone when he left it unattended, dissecting every word he said, every late night, every sigh, even when he wasn't lying anymore. I couldn't stop looking for lies, and maybe that's the real betrayal. What it turns you into. Weeks turned into months. We coexisted, same roof, same routines, but nothing real connected us anymore. It was like living beside a memory. One that was slowly fading no matter how tightly I tried to hold on. Then came that Friday evening, the day the silence finally broke. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. The TV hummed softly in the background. Outside, the sky was melting into orange and gray. And then, I heard it again. That sound. That same rhythmic tapping from upstairs. For a second, I froze. Knife hovering midair, breath shallow. My chest tightened. My hands trembled. Part of me wanted to ignore it. To stay safe in ignorance. But I already knew what I'd find. So I climbed the stairs, and there he was. The same room. The same glow of a screen. The same look of guilt spreading across his face when he saw me standing in the doorway. Only this time, something inside me cracked open. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Why are you doing this? Am I not enough?" he stammered. "It's not what you think," but I didn't let him finish. "Don't," I said, my voice trembling. "Don't lie. Not again." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "It means something," I said, louder now. "You built another world behind my back. Even if it's only words on a screen, it's a world where I don't exist. You chose silence over me." He looked away, his hands shaking, face flushed with shame. And that's when I realized the person I was begging for wasn't even there anymore. The man I had loved, the man I thought I knew, had become someone else. That night, we sat at the table again. Same chairs, same plates, but this time, there was no pretending. The silence wasn't waiting for words anymore. It had said everything already. When I looked at him, I didn't see my husband. I saw a stranger wearing the face of the man I once trusted. The next morning, I packed a bag. No dramatics, no shouting, no tears. just quiet movements. Clothes folded, documents gathered, a few photographs slipped into the side pocket. Before I walked out, I paused in the doorway of that guest room. The room where the silence had started, where it had grown and grown until it devoured everything. And for the first time, I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't look back. I just walked out, into sunlight that felt warmer than it had in years. The silence that followed me this time was different. It wasn't suffocating. It was calm. It was mine. For years, I had lived in a house full of noise that meant nothing, and silence that meant everything. Now finally, I had peace, and though my hands trembled as I drove away, though my heart ached for what could have been, I knew one thing for certain. I had finally chosen myself. Betrayal doesn't always come with shattering glass or screaming matches. Sometimes it's a quiet undoing, a fading of color, a soft, relentless silence that takes over until you wake up one day and realize you've been living beside a stranger and calling it love. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you.